In the film The Matrix, the changes in the world of experience don't stand for anything. Instead, it consists of many parts that can be reduced to a mechanism that keeps everything in the now, like a clock. All is one, equal, which means that individual objects are fake. This is why the agents, the androids, can turn into any object they wish. Since change is meaningless, humanity is free to order the world however it chooses, to tell the story. Writing, understood generally as the ability to give meaning to our lives, to order them, is a happy accident. Human beings can use the laws of nature to invent new technologies that in turn increase their chances of survival. They don't need a savior. As a result, Neo's mind and body became increasingly more dependent on technology because it has a controllable beginning and an end. But this, in turn, made the story more artificial and turned human beings into characters since they lost touch with reality. They don't know they actually live in an artificial world. And only the nihilists, those who don't believe in the world of experience, can tell it. They convinced Neo that technology took over the story, and he is online rather than the timeline by pointing out the strange things that take place in the Matrix. Unpredictable events give rise to uncertainty. If I cannot predict what will happen, then I begin to think that I cannot predict what I'll do either. So I cannot know myself. This is why Neo has to figure out how technology works and act independently of it to save humanity. To be independent is to have an identity. To write without worrying one is a character in someone else's story, to be a god. This is how I understand the plot of The Matrix. Does it reflect my situation? At the start of 2020, it sure seemed like it. But not only The Matrix came to life for me, also the Joker. The story became muddled, and I got into the roles of the main characters. The Neo in me wanted to correct it by analyzing the system, while the Joker in me wanted to take advantage of it. The Neo in me noticed I was losing my world to technology. The Joker in me focused on how much more I could gain from it. But by the start of 2022, I realized that I was encouraged to play these flat characters because when I did, my actions could be predicted and integrated into the story. How can I get out of it? It all began when I was designing thumbnails for my videos. The design platform Canva only had a glitch and double exposure effects. I was meant to be a Neo. Something had happened, but I wasn't sure if we were responsible for it. Are we all victims of our own making? I kept analyzing the health, banking, communication, and political systems to know how the Matrix works. But my calculations were off. After a year of staying in, I became depressed and kept looking for her hug. Characters are fake because they act in ways that can cause harm to themselves and others. They create chaos instead of order. Neo became real, the one, because he was able to act as he ought to in any given situation. There's only one way, the way, to be anything in the Matrix, and he knew this in advance by being calculated. But falling in love creates an unexpected seduction that can make individuals act in ways they never thought they would. Neo's love for Trinity should have taken his powers away from him. It should have made him fake again, a character who has to work on his relationship like all lovers do, and still be clueless about their shared future. Neo should have woken up next to Trinity at the end of it all and told her all about it. Scientists today are waking up from this dream. They realize that the world couldn't be copied or simulated because they can't prove that it is in the now. They get lost when they zoom in. They would rather follow their destiny by looking up. They tell us that one day it will be empty and probably die altogether. This means it might not have an identity, a law that is resilient to change, to death. We can't know the cause, the law, for all the changes we experience. That doesn't mean that everything is random, but that the importance of the many cannot be ignored in favor of the one. The difference between one object and the next and the changes that I see now and across time are not illusions. There is still a possibility that we see death all around us because we are dying, and the world is actually lawful. But without the awareness of our death, we wouldn't have been able to understand what is change in the first place and deduce any laws. The attempt to write the story is to censor death. Scientists tell me that soon I won't reach out to a glass of water with my hands, but click on an imaginary keyword to hydrate. In the future version of the story, there is no chance of broken glasses, accidents, or lack. Desires. Everything will be calculated and available for me. Technology advances in order to turn us into the offsprings of the present. The nihilist thinking gives rise to the matrix, to a controlled, narrow world, and their resistance, with the help of Neo, was meant to regain it rather than free humanity from it. You have a hard time letting go of your ideas about yourself, others, and the past, to lose your identities. They are the reasons why you think and act the way you do. Things have to go according to plan. Expectations multiply. Madness. Rushing causes more and more accidents. And when there is more chaos, psychos, see? I write psychos as chaos. It's kind of similar when you flip it. Rushing causes more and more accidents, and when there are more psychos on the road, it can be a very deadly ride. Slow down. Don't shift to reverse at 100 miles per hour in the middle of the desert. Believe me. I tried it when I was 18. I was a speeding train they didn't mind operating for some reason. I was with my first girlfriend at the time and had tried to grow a beard. I wanted to look like Moses in the desert on my way to get the bad guys, those who can trace history in the sand. I don't want to die with you today. He didn't know that I constantly see the bodies of young Russian immigrants who decided to check out on a permanent heroin vacation or kill themselves with an M16 the state gave them. So 20 years later, I finally learned how to be scared of ghosts and speeding cars. I drove him from Miami to see Hemingway's house. He had to get there. After 8 hours of driving, I told him I didn't want to kill us on the boring road. I pulled aside and we stared at the sunset. Oh, the cycle of light and darkness. The same way life is, right? You win some, you lose some. Things change, but tomorrow is just another day. I didn't bother to tell him that it is just an illusion, and that what really changes is our perspective on the sun. He likes to stand in one place and look over the horizon. This is why he cannot see that I have changed. He is afraid to question himself. When I got out of the army, I painted my entire room yellow-green and listened to dark techno all day long with my headphones while lying in bed. I had a shark that eventually suffocated because I didn't know how to install the fish tank filter. That's a story I've never heard. I was unqualified even to have an exotic pet. Everyone knew I had lost it, but I didn't. People were laughing at my jokes out of a sense of bewilderment. My motorcycle was stolen 3 times. I didn't bother to lock it. I constantly got into accidents because I was busy building my highways while trying to catch cheating husbands with my camera. Needless to say that they ended up chasing me. I had to take a 6-month break from life. This time around, I stared at screens that kept feeding me everything I needed to function. I became a zombie, an entity with a built-in operating system, because I got sick of being paranoid. Paranoia attacks those who are not sure anymore if they actually met the one, their true self, in the matrix, since they got to a point that they don't know why they are acting the way they do. They begin to read other people's minds instead of communicating with them and end up not believing a word they say. Don't reduce me to an idea in your mind. You think you know me? The joke is on you. Faith, no more. Comedians on YouTube had mental breakdowns every day. It was a profound work of art. They realized that everything was fake and unleashed their anger until it became pointless, until it became funny. They can make everything funny by repeating it, by making it predictable. But I couldn't laugh because the world began to scream at me. It was like being struck by a bright light. I had to shut my eyes to find my way around. I witnessed too much change. Objects, governments, street signs, faces, international borders had an unused potential, and my power was discovered. I became the only one who was responsible for the shape of things. I can change them and destroy them. I can change myself and destroy myself. Only reality TV shows calmed me down. The contestants' ethical and moral struggles and triumphs reminded me of the meaning of being human. Are their stories real, or are they good method actors? Who cares? It was inspiring. This is what I'm supposed to do to keep my sanity. But after 2 years of staying in, I began to see how sadistic they were. I went through the arc, from thinking I know myself, to losing myself, to hating myself for hating the world. I am guilty, Father. Please forgive me. Thankfully, at some point, I saw systems without support all around me. Technology cannot shape reality because it is part of the world we are in. When we use it as an oppressive tool, the world becomes too real rather than unreal. The shortcomings of technology became obvious, and instead of doubting whether I was in the matrix, I began to doubt the story. This is the point in which the prophets usually come in. They see an opportunity to take over its direction. In the past, the prophet claimed that the story got off the rails because the readers didn't listen to the writer in the sky. Instead, they worshipped nature, which is meaningless because it changes and uses their technology to remake it. They reproduce a fake reality with a fake God. Only divine technology, one that makes perfect ideas apart from nature, can set them free. They call to form society, to make it one, once and for all. The prophet eventually convinced the readers to remake themselves in silence according to the God's image, law, because they were silenced for so long. They needed to hold on to something perfect that doesn't change. Any slight change, violence, triggered their trauma. After building pyramids for their master, they began to build pyramids in their mind. But this means that they cannot have problems. They must be in denial, which made them more anxious and violent, and their society more centralized and oppressive. It is then a self-fulfilling prophecy. The God was right all along. We need the meaning it gives to our lives. We need the story. Without it, we are nothing. If our words and actions don't have a beginning, an authority, everything will collapse. To deal with the fear of not being normal, not being on the timeline, and not being independent, they turned themselves into slaves again. They had to sacrifice their sanity to have an empty identity. For modern prophets, we can be the writers of the story. But it doesn't have any meaning yet because what we produce with our technology becomes an uncontrollable monster that will bring our demise. It is my fault that the story hasn't been completed and the world will end. I allowed carnal desires, greed, envy, and possessiveness to interfere with my writing. So far, I was more of a reader than a writer because I was driven by nature. I have to stop time from moving in my body and the world to be able to control the future. The end of the story in which the identity of everything will be revealed. This is what ניאו, with the help of Morpheus's training, was eventually able to do. In the end, change will be eliminated since any event will be predictable. The faster I get to that end, the faster I can be free from my past, from my errors and failures, the source of my pain. There wouldn't be a need to read it, but to live by the story. Like all modern prophets, the oracle in the Matrix calls to reform society. But prophets today have to look for more lies. I am too aware of the old ones or dismiss them because I stopped believing I will ever be a good writer like the God. The bulls or the bears, right or left, the red pill or the blue pill, a 50-50 chance bet. A 50-50 chance bet of knowing what you are going to get. We are in a loop. We are in a loop. I hope you vomit. Everything is excellent. Social reality becomes chaotic since everyone must agree that the object they are staring at has one meaning at the same time all the time. When the story gets out of control, we try to form an identity, to become writers by detaching ourselves. Our minds become an app and the other a mouthpiece. This is what actually happened. You are so brainwashed. Yes, you are.
Why are you laughing?
You like to say that I'm brainwashed.
Right. Why do you think that?
Why do I think you say that?
Mm-hmm.
To me?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're always projecting? Because you're brainwashed? In order to commit to what I believe in, I have to be blind. My object holds me from dealing with the present and the past since I have to suppress them in order to stay in control. As time passes, my existence becomes increasingly more painful, which blocks the sounds of reason from coming in. I become obsessive, and I make those around me obsessive as well. They constantly try to gain my trust, but I persistently refuse to give it until I make them crazy. I turn the world into my prison, and in prison, physical violence is the easiest mode to produce change. But I slowly became depressed because everything around me keeps changing. Oh, hold on. It's become. But I slowly become depressed because everything around me keeps changing. I begin to realize that I can't stop time with my mind. This makes the world very deceiving to the point that I hate it. The one wants me to think that the world is fake because it doesn't want me to be different. I don't express my frustrations until I become enraged and vengeful with a smile on my face, until I become the Joker. I begin to corrupt my body when I realize that my thoughts don't make any difference. Let's stop trying to be right and just be stupid. You are the lion. They are your prey. I like to laugh at society and see others suffer in order to feel good. Only staring at the waves can calm me down, coming into being and disappearing over and over again. I hope the next president will think he is in the Matrix. He will wear lipstick and sing cover songs about pain. Who's your daddy? Technology tries to center everything, to keep it on the timeline, and when it fails, it splits it. Two opposites don't become one as it is expected in the story. The one becomes its opposite. The mind gets confused and the body poses. The ניאו jokers are everywhere. They are committed to their beliefs. They have faith while simultaneously enjoying the chaos all around them. Someone who looks like ניאו does whatever he wishes, and someone who looks like the Joker says he wants to do the right thing. You have to keep watching the screen when you don't know which part the characters are supposed to play. It became a really good show ever since real method actors began to play only the psycho. Perhaps I should give up and let artists take over technology in order to make something new for me. Writing is a form of self-making rather than self-knowledge. This is a call to revolutionize society. I went to the museum to see if they came up with anything new, and found out that they keep reappropriating whatever they see around them. It became sadistic because repetition kills meaning, and new shiny things kill it faster. They think they can remake reality with the use of their technology, the same way teenage parents think that they can remake themselves with the use of their children. The more magnificent and shinier their creation is, the more people can agree on it because it is easier to agree on something new. The more people agree on it, the more they want to buy it, and the more people want to buy it, the more influence it will have on everyone's perception of reality. To be relevant and successful, they constantly have to come up with new artifacts that can cultivate an audience around them, including themselves. Any serious nihilist must start a cult. No one will hurt me again if I am powerful, if I can produce my own meaning, order, empire. The emptiness of the world is not only beneficial to the god, but also to the victim. It can potentially have endless power. Wounded thinkers, politicians, scientists, engineers, moneymakers, healers, and artists really have to remake reality rather than trying to convince others to change it. They spread mistrust in order to gain control. They persuade people to become blind. We call them the visionaries. Fake it until you make it, or until you get busted. The screen protectors keep projecting stories about them because cults challenge the story, the order of everything, but they are actually produced by it. Meaning without resistance is self-destructive. Prophets, nihilist fortune tellers who advise tech moguls get to be heard on our screens. I wonder how long it will take for our followers to resist their predictions. It won't matter because revolutions help to order the story. It becomes more resilient to change while we become an addicted body that keeps storing pain in a completely curated environment. Sounds today have a fainted echo. We need a hearing aid. The ones in Switzerland are good. Who has time to wait? I need to hear. I need to hear now. The sirens. I'm okay. I'm safe in the hospital's hallways. But it is custom made. You like everything to be custom made, even death. The machine will custom make your speech one day. Believe me, I know how the world works. Yes, that's the problem. You haven't lived much. You become Italian furniture, classy and slick, or a code that can open all the doors in a shitty residential building by Times Square. Forms of world censorship in the name of independence, in the name of becoming the authors of the story, eventually become the forms of self-censorship. Whatever I upload to my computer or my mind silences me back. What does that mean? Silences me back. I'll read on. Everything has a reason in the story, but I don't have a reason to be in it. Every step, sound, and decision I make means to keep me on the timeline. I have to go back home, be with myself, and gather myself. But my home also got turned into a hub. I'm locked in. The moment we reduce our possibilities to ones and zeros, yes or no, black or white, we have more to lose, and we begin to control everything around us even more. The techno-fanatics claim that we want to live forever. In the future, we will all be vampire machines. But what they fail to understand is that when life is not memorable, it doesn't really matter how long you live. You are willing to enter the lion's cage with dignity. The process of writing the story over the years can be understood as a series of attempts to commit identity theft. We are witnessing today the most successful one. The modern state didn't help to make the story clearer because its identity is incomplete. No state had ever controlled all the resources of this world. Export agreements and monetary systems give rise to wars. The oppressed need a better technology, one that can centralize the globe, that can really give them independence. We are helping to make the empire of all empires an irresponsible global corporation, a vicious god. We limit our past and future to be able to tell the story, only to end up being the victims of the present. One day, I got out of my building, and everyone on the street looked up. I started running until I realized I was in the middle of a shoot for a series about an alien invasion or something like that. When I heard the cut, I laughed my ass off. So stay away from doorman residential buildings that look like the Empire State Building. Your moon will be the logo of an insurance company. It ripples on dirty windows only men with ropes can clean. This is meant to be love. We were meant to live in the story. We hide in basements and then move up into the empire. From being rebellious teenagers to living in a father's castle. We are getting out of our lease and out of each other's lives. That's not what exactly you wrote. Should I say it like that? You didn't say out the second time. We are getting out of our lease and from each other's lives. We tried to figure out how relationships work, the form of love, but we couldn't agree on it. We also tried to treat each other differently, to revolutionize our love. But that didn't work either. We were brave to make a choice and end our romantic relationship. Self-delusion in the name of loyalty. Hold on. Self-delusion in the name of loyalty and attachment is the most dangerous form of repression. It can lead to uncontrollable violence. The sense of losing my story awakened the monster in me, and she put it back to sleep. I then began to blame her. But you refused to change. You turned me into your monster. She feels the same. Today, I feel we should have agreed on what is changing between us. We should have communicated more. You want to get out of the system and move to the country, and I want to go up to the roof and be King Kong. Instead, you went to visit your mom, and I went to the dry sauna and became the mummy for 15 minutes. You believe energy never dies, and I'm trying to save mine. When everyone began to wait for the next disaster, I stopped functioning. ניאו was wrong and became desperate because he wasn't able to deny the world around him all the way down. He then turned into a joker, a character who failed and became vengeful because he was in denial. And I derailed because I became a broken tool. I couldn't go on the way that I did until that point. That's what we were just talking about. At that point, you couldn't go on as you have been before, trying so hard to change my perspective so that you and I could get along. This is your mindset is Colin needs to get rid of this part of her personality so me and her can move on and live on well together. And then, at some point during the lockdown, you were just no. So, she's really not doing what I wished she would be. And so you were like, no way. You said, what'd you say? You said you derailed because you couldn't go on the way that you did until that point. It's like, it's too hard to talk about so soon. Like I need to go through personally on my side of it. I need to go through some healing in order to be able to even like process all of that stuff. Everything I did and thought seemed like a mistake. I am weird. Living is strange in this story. The old questions came about. Who should I be and what should I do? This time I ignored them, which made sense of time this time I ignored them, which made my sense of time very intense. I wasn't myself. I saw myself. I used to be these characters, or more accurately, I saw myself as these characters the moment I didn't care about losing what I think I knew about myself. It's very profound. At that moment, I was able to create a point of view. I felt a sense of failure mixed with excitement. I didn't want to live for my goals and values anymore. I wanted to live for what I didn't think I ever would. I wanted to fall in love with life again. Scientists tell me that love can't be real because it is not independent. It can't be measured. But its lack can when the body begins to attack itself. Anything that is meaningful to me cannot be turned into technology, into a tool that can be applied in the same way in the future. Technology stresses and then flattens to produce mechanical and defensive movements that can then fit into the story. It helps me to forget, but at the same time, it made me vulnerable to immune system diseases. It succeeded in keeping me on the timeline by making me emotionally handicapped. Stress is a means of control, and love sustains creativity. One day, I suddenly began to dance fanatically in front of my screens.
Fanatic.
It's fanatic. You wrote frantic.
Frantically.
Oh, it is frantically. You're right, frantically. One day, I suddenly began to dance frantically.
You said fanatically.
Yeah, I know. No, you're always using the word fanatic. Constantly. It's like constantly in my head. How many times have I said to you that you create your own story about me? Your own version of reality.
And how many times I told you that you don't trust my point of view?
Because you're making up stories about me. So.
No.
Anyways.
No, I absolutely not. You just don't trust me.
Stress is a means of control, and love sustains creativity. One day, I suddenly began to dance frantically in front of my screens. I realized that I can take many points of view on my body, and that I cannot take all of them at once. Nice. I really like that. I began to remember what I was willing to forget for the sake of the story. Everything I thought and did wasn't altogether a mistake. I didn't pay too much attention to what was happening around me. Since everything constantly changes, nothing can be seen by me from one perspective at one time, but from many perspectives in different phases. I constantly have to figure out which of my points of view and perspectives are getting narrower and which ones are getting wider in order to locate myself. I cannot follow something that doesn't change, like my ideas. I can't follow ghosts anymore. I know I will get lost. Instead of asking what happened or will happen, I have to ask myself what has changed and will change. This is how I get a sense of the past and the future. The before and after, me and the world, exist only in the language I use in order to tell the story. I can only understand what I am saying with my thoughts and actions by being in between moments, by acknowledging the loss. To live is to learn how to process what has ended and what has already begun. The more variations the song of life has, the more memorable it becomes, which eases the stress I put on it out of my fear of losing time. I have to remember to listen to more echoes in the future in order to breathe better.